Hey guys, my name is Emily if you haven't seen my face before, and today I'm making a video on my top 10 shows that I've seen in the year 2021. I am very much a big fan of Netflix and just binging shows. I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do when I have free time. So I do watch quite a few different shows, and my favorite ones tend to be ones that are more dramatic and really emotional. I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy and that kind of thing, so that's kind of where my preferences lie. But at the same time, I do enjoy a pretty wide variety of different shows. I did already upload a video a little bit earlier in the week, but I wanted to make sure I uploaded this video as well, just so I could give you guys a little bit of a bonus as a thank you for getting me to 250 subscribers in my first year of YouTube. That was such a big accomplishment for me, and it made me really happy, so thank you guys so much for supporting me. So for what I consider to be in my top 10, I wanted it to be shows that I've either seen the majority of this year, or I have seen all of the show, or even just all of the season that was released, or most of the season, that kind of thing. I didn't want to include shows that I've only just started or haven't seen the majority of, because I wouldn't really have a good enough opinion on it to consider it one of my top 10 shows that I've seen all year. This video will be spoiler free, so don't worry about that. I just encourage you guys to keep from putting spoilers in the comments below, just in case there's anyone watching this video that hasn't seen these shows already and plans to in the future. Something I want to mention before I get into my top 10 is that these are going to be ranked from number 10 to number 1, with 10 being my least favorite and number 1 being my most favorite. But all of these shows are my favorite because they are in my top 10, so just because a show might be number 10, it doesn't mean it is bad. It is still one of my favorites of the whole year. It's just that number 1 is definitely the show that I feel the strongest about and really love the most. So number 10 on my list is kind of a cluster of different shows. It is The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, and Bachelor in Paradise. All of these 3 shows are kind of existing in the same realm, I guess you could call it. If you aren't familiar with The Bachelor, it's basically a show about one man who ends up dating multiple women at the same time. They all join the show to potentially get married to the man that is in running for that season, and then every week or so he sends them home, and eventually the goal is to get to the end of the show and propose to one of them. And The Bachelorette is kind of the reverse of that, where it is one woman who is choosing between a bunch of different men to choose a husband in the end. And then Bachelor in Paradise is kind of a mashup of all of the contestants who did not get married in the end, so you get some from a bunch of different seasons of Bachelor and Bachelorette all together to potentially fall in love there as well. I've always kept up relatively well with The Bachelor, but this year specifically, I've watched so many seasons of it, just bam, 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 in order to kind of hope to catch up. I think by the end of this year, I will be caught up with the newer seasons, because I didn't watch it for a few years, but now I am getting back into the Bachelor groove, and I love the drama in it. There's always some girls and guys who are just stirring up problems in the house that the contestants are staying in, and I love it. There's just so much back and forth, as well as, of course, the romance between the contestants and the main bachelor or bachelorette, given their situation. There are a bunch of seasons to watch if you haven't started the show and you are looking for something with many seasons. But overall, it is just a really nice show to veg out to, I guess. If you don't want something that is really in depth or anything like that, you just want a nice casual show to watch, then I would really recommend this one for you. My number 9 show of the year is actually Degrassi: The Next Generation. Right now I am on the 7th season, but I'm actually rewatching it. I did watch a few episodes here and there of each season a few years back, but now I'm actually committing to watching every episode and getting through the whole thing. So I have a good idea on what the show is about. And if you aren't familiar with Degrassi, it is a Canadian drama about high school students and all of the problems that they go through, and it follows their school lives as well as some of their home lives. And all of the characters have their own thing going on, and the story just kind of goes on from there. There is quite a big cast, which I actually personally enjoy. They're all easy to keep track of, and I love most of them, so it is a really enjoyable show to watch, in my opinion. The episodes are also very short. They're about 20 minutes long, so it's what I go to every time I want a quick show to watch that is pretty simple to follow along with, and it goes really quickly because the episodes are so short. I've watched seasons like that just very quickly, and I'm definitely a big fan of it. I think if you are a fan of high school dramas and you want something also that has a bunch of seasons, I think there's close to 12 or 14 seasons of Degrassi: The Next Generation, And then there is Degrassi Next Class, I think it's called. So there's a bunch of seasons of this show as well. I don't always like that if the shows are crazy long, but because the episodes are so short, it doesn't really make a difference to me, and it's just very enjoyable. So I've really been enjoying this show this year. And there are some really real topics that the show discusses that I think are really important for teenagers, so if you are looking for something like that as well, this would be good for you. For number 8, I have Gossip Girl, and this wouldn't be the original Gossip Girl, this is actually the remake or reboot Gossip Girl that was just released this year. They only did one season so far, but I believe they are making a next season not too long from now, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I loved the original Gossip Girl, I loved the cast, the story, and everything like that, but the new Gossip Girl is very similar in some ways and very different in others. If you aren't familiar with the concept of Gossip Girl, it's basically about a bunch of preppy teenagers in high school who are living their lives, and there is a blog called Gossip Girl who ends up spreading a bunch of secrets about everyone because people send in secrets and tabs and all this stuff on the different characters. So that's kind of what the original Gossip Girl was about. The new Gossip Girl, which is the one that I'm ranking at number 8, is very similar to that, but it's a whole new cast. It still exists in the same realm as the original, just a few years later, and Gossip Girl is actually an Instagram account, so it's a lot more modern than the original Gossip Girl. Personally, I did like the original more. It was iconic, and many people are huge fans of Gossip Girl, myself included, but this one is still very good. I'd actually overpassed my expectations for it. I thought it would just be a unnecessary show that we didn't really need to bring back, but I'm actually very impressed with it. I'm really enjoying the characters. It's a lot more modern, like I said, and there's a lot of interesting dynamics going on, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this show takes off from here. It is really good. You don't really need to watch the original Gossip Girl to follow along with what this show is doing, but there are little Easter eggs in there if you are a fan of the original. Coming in at number 7, I have Squid Game, which is probably one of the most popular shows of 2021. A bunch of people got really into it. It is a very short show. There's only 9 episodes, I think, and the episodes are a bit longer, but it is only one season. I'm pretty sure they have confirmed a season 2. If you aren't familiar with Squid Game and you haven't watched it yet, it is basically about a bunch of people who are competing for money, and they are doing these childish games, I guess, in competition to win a grand prize. So they all have some type of issue with money that they want to solve by participating in these games. And they kind of get a little bit deadly, so there is that. And the show moves really quickly, which is something I really enjoyed. I was on the edge of my seat for a lot of it, just waiting to see what was going to happen, and I did get really attached to the characters really quickly. If a show can make you care about characters in only 9 episodes, I think it's definitely doing something right. So this is a show that I really much enjoyed. I don't think it necessarily needed a season 2 because it was really good where it was, but I will still be watching season 2 when it comes out, and hopefully it is close to or as good as season 1. I would, of course, give a little bit of a trigger warning if you aren't comfortable with seeing a bunch of people being killed, then this definitely would not be the show for you. For number 6, I have You, specifically season 3. I watched season 1 and 2 earlier, obviously, and I was really anticipating season 3 when it finally came out. And if you aren't familiar with the show You, it is about a young man who gets really obsessive with women that he loves, and he meets a young woman and he falls in love with her, and he is willing to do basically anything to get her. And it really becomes obsessive very quickly. And I'm not going to say any more than that because this is this 3rd season that I have just watched, but before you get into the 3rd season, you definitely need to watch season 1 and season 2, so I'm not going to give spoilers for either of those. That kind of synopsis, I guess, is more gearing towards season 1, and the story kind of picks off from there. This is another show that I feel like didn't necessarily need to have season 3 because season 1 and season 2 were great, but I also really enjoyed season 3. It had a little bit of a different vibe to it, but it still is the same kind of nature that goes on throughout the rest of the show. If you are fans of season 1 and 2, I don't think you will be necessarily disappointed with season 3. I definitely wasn't. I binged it really quickly and I loved it, so that's why this one is number 6. The show is a little bit reminiscent of Dexter. If you are a fan of Dexter, I think there are some similarities. It definitely is a different show, so you don't have to worry about it being the same, but I think there is a lot of room for potential for a next season, which has already been confirmed. So I am going to be looking forward to that. I don't really know where the show can take off because I feel like this would have been a very good ending, but at the same time, they left an opening, so we will see how that goes. At number 5, I have Game of Thrones, which is a show that I started earlier on in the year. It is definitely different for me, and I am on season 8, which is the last season of the show, so I kind of have a general idea of how I feel about the entire show. I have heard, though, that the 8th season isn't necessarily the best, but I'm just going to be talking about the show as a whole. So this show is about a bunch of kingdoms and families who are kind of competing for royalty. And I don't want to give too much away, of course, but it is a fantasy type of show, which is usually, like I said before, not really my cup of tea. But I did really get into the show, surprisingly. It took me about a season or two to catch on to what was going on. There are a bunch of characters, and the language and all of that stuff is a little bit more medieval times. So it takes you a while to get used to it, but once you're into it, you are into it, and it took me for a ride. I really enjoyed the characters, and the show actually did inspire me to start doing some more braided hairstyles like I am wearing today, because all of the characters have really cool hair, so that is also a bonus. But for the show in general, it did a really good job of getting me really interested in a new world, which is a show that I wouldn't typically go for. So if you aren't a fan of fantasy or medieval type of shows, I would still give this one a chance, because I definitely wouldn't have thought that I would have loved it as much as I do. And that says something, because like I said, I usually only go for like the dramatic type of shows, and this one blew me away. So this one is rightfully in my top 10. If you do start watching it and you do get a little bit confused, just bear with it, give it some time, because it is a very complex show. There are a bunch of layers, but once you kind of start to understand, it really is worth it. For my number 4 spot, I have Dexter New Blood, which is the sequel to the original show Dexter, which is also one of my all-time favorite shows. I'm a huge fan of Dexter. I loved the original series. It was 8 seasons long, and it is about a serial killer. You may be noticing a little bit of a theme here. I typically enjoy those type of shows, as well as just regular high school dramas, but this show is about Dexter, who is a serial killer who kills other killers. And Dexter New Blood is a sequel, so I'm not going to get too much into what specifically Dexter New Blood is about, because it will spoil the end of Dexter if you haven't seen that. I don't think you necessarily need to absolutely watch all 8 seasons of Dexter before watching Dexter New Blood, but it definitely is a sequel, so a bunch of details won't be as impactful if you haven't watched the original. And Dexter New Blood is only about 8 episodes, I think is what is out right now at the time I'm filming this, and I love it. Honestly, it's only been a few episodes, but I'm already very invested in the story. I love the basic concept of Dexter. It's such a good idea in my opinion, and the characters are great. I love the main character. He's a great actor, and he just makes everything really enjoyable to watch. That being said, though, I don't know if they're making more of this show, so if it is just going to be a 1-season thing, then I am pretty much almost done with it. But nonetheless, this was great. I wish there would be more, because it is such a great series. I love Dexter, and if you haven't checked it out yet, you definitely need to, unless you are very squeamish and you definitely aren't comfortable with serial killers and that type of stuff. Coming in at number 3, I have Pretty Little Liars, and this is a little bit of an older show. A few years back it ended. There are 7 seasons, and right now I am on the 7th season, so I am almost done with the show. I know they are also making a reboot, Pretty Little Liars, soon after this year, but we will see how that one goes. I'm making my way through this series, which has taken me quite a long time. Pretty Little Liars is very popular with my generation. I guess you could say a bunch of us watched it when we were in high school. If you aren't familiar with Pretty Little Liars, the basis of it is a group of girls who are friends in high school, and they start receiving some threatening messages that would only be known by their friend Allison, who has gone missing. And so they're kind of trying to discover whether or not this person is Allison, if she's alive, or if it is someone else who has killed Allison, who is pretending to be her, and the story just goes on from there. It does have that mystery aspect of trying to figure out who this person is that is threatening them, and that kind of stuff. I love the characters in this show. I am very much attached to them, and I will miss them once I finish the 7th season, but it has been a wonderful ride for me. I have loved all of the show. I think there are some seasons that are better than others, as all shows are, but at the same time, this is one that I'm a really big fan of, which is why it's so high on my list. If you love high school dramas that also have that mystery element, I think this one would be great for you if you haven't checked this one out already. There definitely have been a lot of times where I've been caught off guard, and there have been plot twists and everything like that that have really surprised me, which I love in a show, and I don't see everything coming, which is always nice. This is also a really fun show to watch with friends because you can kind of make your own theories and see who can kind of predict what's happening more accurately, which is really fun as well. My number 2 spot is 13 Reasons Why, which has 4 seasons, and I have watched all 4 this year, and this has been such a great show. I loved it. If you aren't familiar with 13 Reasons Why, it is based off of a book which is about a teenager named Hannah who ends up killing herself, unfortunately, and she leaves these 13 tapes behind for people to listen to who she wants to know why she killed herself. So it is a very heavy show. There are a lot of dark concepts in here. There is a bunch of trigger warnings, so if you are very uncomfortable with suicide, self-harm, depression, anything like that, sexual abuse, I would definitely not watch the show because there are a lot of scenes like that that could impact you if you are easily triggered. But if you aren't comfortable with all of those things and they don't affect you mentally, then I would definitely recommend this show for you because it is great. Just be careful with all of those things. If you feel like you're uncomfortable watching them, then definitely don't push yourself because there are quite a few really graphic scenes in there. The show does go past the book. If you have read the book, that kind of sums up the first season of the show, and then it takes a little bit of a different direction. And honestly, I thought that it would only be 1 season and that we didn't really need more, but I'm so happy that they made more because I loved every season of the show. I was super attached to the characters. The finale had me crying pretty much the whole time. It was such a trip and I loved it. The characters were great, and the show had a very, very satisfying ending. It just left it at a really good place and I didn't feel like I needed more. Although I do want more, it was a really satisfying way to wrap up the show. And if you haven't checked this one out yet, I think you would like it if you do want something that will really make you feel things, but also just really enjoyable to watch. And finally, for the number 1 show in my top 10 for shows that I've watched this year is the Vampire Diaries. This is my all-time favorite show over everything. I love it with my whole heart. I love all of the characters. It just makes me feel so many things, and I'm so passionate about this show because it is so good. This is 8 seasons long, and if you aren't familiar with it, it is a supernatural show that starts off with a teenager named Elena who is just recovering from the death of her parents when she gets introduced to some supernatural vampires, and some other things start happening and life just kind of goes on from there, and it gets kind of crazy. This is a show that has made me cry the most over every show. I have cried in every single season. All of the season finales have been amazing. The season finale of the last season was so good that I was literally bawling in my room for probably 20 minutes after I finished it because it just made me feel so many things. If you are looking for a show that will make you cry and pull on your heartstrings, then I think this one would be it. This one made me cry in every single season. I loved this show with my whole heart, and I just was so attached to everybody that it broke my heart whenever this show ended. So if you haven't seen Vampire Diaries and this intrigues you, you definitely need to check it out. But even if it doesn't and you are looking for a new show, I would strongly recommend you give this one a chance. Give it a few episodes because the pilot isn't necessarily the best in my opinion, but the show in a whole is amazing. So definitely check this one out if you want a new show that will make you attach to the characters and will leave you feeling empty when it is over. Alright guys, so that wraps up this video. If you guys have watched these shows, let me know down below, as well as if you have any suggestions for shows that you think that I would enjoy, because I'm definitely open to new suggestions. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want to, you can go ahead and leave a like, a comment, or subscribe if you want, and I will see you next time. Thanks guys. Bye. God bless.